Well, hello everyone. It has been a while since we have done one of these civilizations in review, and I'm ecstatic to be back here. Thank you all for joining us this evening as we dive deep into a wonderful empire. Happens to be Moroccan, matching the flag behind me. We have Ilko van Riel calling in, who wrote this incredible civilization, and Umayma Fatih, who has written several others and is here to interview with me tonight. As a reminder, and I guess for those who are tuning in for the very first time, Civilizations in Review is a podcast slash live stream video that talks about one of our many ancient empires on the Al-Fuzaic website. So if you go to alfuzaic.net and then the Civilizations 101 section, you will see 84 different ancient empires, dynasties, caliphates, kingdoms that make up what we now call the modern Swana, Southwest Asia, North Africa, or you may know it as the MENA, Middle East, North Africa region. Tonight's empire is the Midrarid Dynasty, which we will jump into in a second. But I'm just really grateful to have all of you here tonight and to learn this incredible period of history. As a reminder, you're with us right now on Facebook, so welcome. We will also be posting this to our Spotify account as a podcast, to our website, to our YouTube, and to our Instagram, so you can engage with this content in all 5 of those places I just mentioned. And without any further ado, we will jump right in. Umayma, if you don't mind reading the 101-word introduction, and then we'll start with some questions to Ilko. Welcome all.
Yeah, of course. So the Midrarid Dynasty, a largely forgotten medieval dynasty of Amazigh origin, founded and subsequently ruled over the caravan city of Sijil Massa on the northern edges of the Sahara from the mid-8th to the 10th century. The Midrarid rulers of Sijil Massa entertained Kharijite beliefs, and these beliefs deemed heterodox by the Abbasid and Umayyads, were welcomed by the Maghribi tribes who resorted to the aforesaid tradition to justify their uprising against Arab rule over the Maghreb. While the Midrarids continued to govern Sijil Massa until the end of the 10th century, the Fatimid conquest of Sijil Massa in 909 foreshadowed their eventual demise.
Thank you for that intro, and thank you, Ilko, for jumping us off here. There are so many questions we can go in just your intro alone, my goodness. But let's start with my favorite question, which is what prompted you to choose this dynasty of all of the empires on our site?
Well, I guess the answer is it's really easy. I just didn't know anything about it. The Midrarid for me is something completely new. I mean, I've studied, I did Islamic studies a while back though, but never heard about the Midraid Dynasty. It is a largely forgotten dynasty, of course, or at least, yeah, I guess it is. So it was just like getting to know something new, something about a region that is, of course, obviously very interesting, and just get to learn something new. I guess that's the main thing, because the name in all those years never even popped up. So it was just something new, I guess. But then again, I mean, even if you consult the textbooks about the sort of medieval Islam in this particular region, nothing really. There is a sort of footnote once in a while, but that's just about it. So it's really hard to gather decent information to sort of get a good grip on this particular dynasty.
Yeah. Actually, as a Moroccan, I've also never heard much about Midrarid Dynasty.
I'm amazed.
Yeah, even though we know the Sijil Massa, the city founded by this amazing dynasty. Still today, there are ruins of the city in the southeast of Morocco. And actually, once when you said forgotten, I'm actually really interested to know, based on your research, what was the reason for this? We know more about Arab dynasties that went through the region,
Sure.
but why was this dynasty that not that much known and forgotten in history?
Well, I guess you, of course, like you already said or referred to, you do have the archaeological remains. You still have the remains of one palace, I believe, and I don't know for what reason, but the sort of the manuscripts that did, or the Yes, just documents. They themselves disappeared. I mean, it must have been because even Khaldun himself, he also refers to the dynasty, but he couldn't really get his hands on proper materials about the dynasty. So the reason why they've been forgotten is, well, is a big question mark. But I guess
Mhm.
the biggest thing with this whole, and that's what I found, well, that's definitely one of the tough parts. If you, I mean, I don't have years to spend sort of digging into and doing research on this particular dynasty, but it's hard to find decent materials. Not much has been written about the Midrarids,
Mhm.
and it was just,
Okay.
yeah. As
So
far as
thank you for sharing. Like, if
yeah,
there's
well,
like any facts you would like us to know about this dynasty that like
I guess
you found to be interesting.
the most important thing, I guess, is well, is first and foremost is just the a trading post. Really, the whole dynasty revolved around Sijil Masa, if I pronounced that correctly. And just as a trading, it was a major trading post on the trading routes between the heart, I believe, of the Arab world and certain parts of Africa. And it was this particular thing that made them into, well, a successful dynasty that lasted for at least 2 centuries. So trading is definitely at the heart, sort of the beating heart of this civilization. And I think that's the most, well, probably, yeah, that's the most important thing.
Really fascinating. Personally, as you know, you've mentioned, thank you for finding all of these resources, compiling them, because a big part of the Civilizations 101 section at all is to showcase these different parts of history.
Yeah.
It beyond it fascinates me that as a Moroccan, you have not heard of this dynasty. You've heard of the city and the legacy.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that is so fascinating and interesting. And again, why this entire series exists. So firstly, thank you. Glad that now some more people know what this dynasty is. What I have found super interesting and just sort of looking over the article itself, and again, for all of those who want to follow along and read more, you can go to the Civilizations 101 section to the Midrarid area. But one of the sections I find super fascinating is in your key accomplishment section.
Yeah.
And you talked about al-Bakri, who I've heard of before, not in relation to Midrarid, but as a very influential geographer, as well as Ibn Khaldun, a very important explorer. Can you talk a bit more about their connection to the Midrarid dynasty in the research you've done?
Their particular connection to the Midrarids.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's just Ibn Khaldun and al-Bakri, I believe they are the only eminent figures within, well, I guess the broader sort of Islamic tradition that have referred to the Midrarids at all. They're not really it's not really detailed. It's just one or two descriptions about the Midrarids, but they themselves couldn't get a hold on sort of, well, the documents themselves because the documents didn't survive. So there is just there is just small sort of footnote descriptions about the Midrarids, and of course al-Bakri and Ibn Khaldun, both of them, well, they occupy well, defining position, I would say. So I guess that's also my reason for including them into the key accomplishments. But there are no expansive documents describing the evolution of the Midrarid society and civilization. Ben?
Oh no, that's fascinating. Go for it.
Yeah, actually, it's really when you mentioned how like Sijil Masa, the city was like the linking point, like as a trade between the Islamic world and West Africa. So I was just wondering, like, to which extent trade have changed the city and the region, since that Sijil Masa, like geographically speaking, is like in desert. It's like in southeast of Morocco. Yeah. So if you can tell us more about that.
Well, it definitely changed. I guess it changed everything. They were sort of the gateway into the southern parts of Africa, and so they played a fundamental role in the a sort of portal, I guess. Yeah, a gateway is probably a good description. And it was just goods coming in, coming out, traders coming in from the north, from the east, traveling towards the south. So it was sort of this hub, a trading hub, and people from all sorts of backgrounds just came together to trade ideas as well. And I guess that's one of the important things about Sirja Masa. And that's also why it occupies a important position, especially in the sort of Maghrebi history of Islam. And it still does. It has always, even under Fatimid rule. I mean, when the Fatimids took over, it became, I mean, all these different larger civilizations and societies, the Abbasids, of course, the Umayyads from the southern part of Spain, from the peninsula, they all vied for control over Sirja Masa, because it was just, it was the gateway to a large continent.
Yeah, that's really interesting to know.
I guess that's the most important thing about the Midraids. They were at the founding of Sirja Masa, so they really just sort of commenced or sort of started this whole process. They really, well, perhaps in a way even gave birth to these trans-Saharan trading routes.
It's a fascinating statement. I mean, because I have heard of Sijil Masa, Ibn Khaldun, but I have never heard of the Midrarids until really wrote it. It's interesting that the legacy of this specific dynasty is the city and the main explorer, not the trade routes, the peace building, the communities that were accustomed with this empire. That is just so many of the other empires on our list. You may not have heard of them, but they had their name was at least associated with like the blah 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 palace, and that was the name of that empire. The Midraids, that name is just not anywhere. Where does that name even come from? Do you know what, like, the word Midrarid, was that the initial ruler's last name? Do you know where that? It's okay if you don't know. I'm just curious because, again, like, I have lived and studied in Morocco often. Umayma is Moroccan, and just that name, their legacy, their impact we know of, but the name itself we don't. And I think that's really bizarre in a way. And I'm just curious in your research if you came across where that name originated.
Well, no, I didn't. That's because the founder himself wasn't called Midrarid, nor was the most important ruler. I believe his name is Muntasir. So where the name Midrarid came from, that's still it's a guess. But then
I think it's just to which extent it's really important when it comes to document history. And since there are like enough resources on that, like the following dynasties may take a lot of credits for what Midrarid Dynasty have initiated.
Perhaps. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, there is not, except for the sort of archaeological remains, not much has been has survived the ages. So there's just not that much is known. There's been one large archaeological expedition, partly funded, I believe, but I'm not 100% sure, funded by the French government, beginning of or mid 20th century, but that's just about it. And I guess there are a few academics working on the Midraids, but
fascinating.
Just a couple of them, not that much, not that many.
It's interesting too, because it's right at the initiation of Islam as well, is the Midrarids. And I know you talk a little bit about the religious identity of the empire. If you want to speak a little bit more to it, I think that would be an interesting addition to this conversation.
Yeah, well, I guess it's just like the Almoravids, which is a bit later, of course. I believe that's 11th century. They themselves were also responsible for the sort of expansion of Islam, especially in that particular region. And the Midarids themselves also played a key role, I believe, in the transmission of those ideas, especially about the Kharijit, the first sort of sect within Islam. And I guess they were sort of, well, in a way you could say, since they were the rulers of an important city, they were also the retainers of these ideas. So they played a key role in, keeping them alive, I guess, And of course, Sijamasa even then was, especially at its founding, was a rather remote place. So the Abbasids and also the Umayyads, the Umayyad dynasty, they couldn't really get to it. So I guess it's just sort of a refuge, a harbor, and not only for its people, but also for these sectarian Kharajid beliefs and ideas. So yeah.
Fascinating. Thanks.
Yeah, but again, it's really the Midrarids. It's just anecdotal, just base footnotes, brief references in the works, like writers of Ibn Khaldun, but there is no large books written about this dynasty.
Yeah, and actually, to my knowledge of like the city of Sijil Masa, like I've never, like as I said, heard of Midrarid, so I didn't link them to this dynasty. But when it comes to like how was like very advanced as a city when it comes to trade, I think when like Ibn Battuta, the Moroccan traveler, mentioned that when exploring China, that compared one of the like places there in China to Sijil Masa, and this was my knowledge about it and how advanced it was, that compared it with in terms of trade. So I think maybe like a lot of maybe more research needs to be done to dig deep and then to know more about this forgotten again like dynasty.
No, absolutely. They should probably fund another or an archaeological sort of expedition, or at least support like archaeological excavations, maybe, because as far as I know, but they haven't unearthed any sort of written documents. Everything has been, as far as I know, again, but everything has been lost. And it's funny because the ones who took over, the Fatimids and the Rusamids, much has been written about them. And we know way more about these particular civilizations than we know about the Midrarids.
Yeah.
Which also makes it just, it's tough to write, because otherwise just, I don't even know sort of what am I, it's hard. The economics was just fine, but the modern influence, for example, I mean, of course, the remains, you can still visit, like you said, the remains of Sijamasa, but the what has their contribution been to later societies or later Islamic civilizations? It's hard to pinpoint.
That's so interesting. And definitely, as we're rounding the end of our civilization section, we only have very few left. So if you'd like to help us finish it, please apply to be a content writer at Al-Fuzaic. But, the sections that are the very end of our list, it gets a little bit harder because they are less well-known pieces of history. So firstly, thank you for scrounging it together. That's very, very important. But I mean, you sort of touched upon it, the aspects of the ruins of the city, the writings of Ibn Khaldun, the maps and discoveries of al-Bakri, that is the legacy of the Midarids.
Even in a way it is, pieces, I guess it is,
it's a really interesting piece there. Whereas, the Rustamids, the Almoravids, other larger Moroccan, West North African empires are much larger, well-known, expanded more. It sounds like, and from your research, the Midarids were kind of not the first, but the initiators of a lot of this trade that other empires then took credit for and utilized. Would you say that's probably accurate in your research?
Yeah. I guess it is, definitely. They were definitely the sort of foundational in many ways, especially if you look at just Sijamasa as a trading post. I mean, they were, of course, the ones who founded the Midrid. The Midrids were the ones who founded Sijamasa. So I think you could say that. Yeah, I guess that's an accurate summary.
Cool.
I think also you did a great job on for me at least have more curiosity to learn about Midrarid dynasty and dig deep and research about its link to Sijil Masa, because there's, for me, I didn't know about its existence before.
Neither did I. Neither did I. For me, it was completely new, just something novel. I didn't know anything about it. never heard about them. So that was also, I guess that was also the main reason, sort of, well, maybe I can sort of unearth or find these little tidbits and piece it together, and maybe other ones will pick up the thread.
Mm-hmm.
See what happens.
Well, I mean, you are our foremost Midrarid scholar, Ilko, so who knows, some incredible Midrarid discoveries that to have. Yeah, I'm curious sort of as we wrap up here, and again, we have not touched upon a lot of pieces. Please go read Ilko's article. There's many more great details and hyperlinks there. Are there any sort of final discoveries or cool things you learned in your research, Ilko, that you'd like to share as we end this call?
Well, I guess it's funny or really unbelievable that this dynasty lasted at least 2 centuries, and that there's just nothing has sort of survived the ages. I find that in many ways I do find that baffling, given the fact that they were important. It's just like, well, I guess that's something exceptional. You've had a dynasty that has lasted for 2 centuries, and we barely know anything about it, which is, well, maybe other ones should try to sort of dig deeper, but I guess that's what I found really, well, mind-blowing in many ways, I guess. Yeah.
Lovely. Any final questions you have, Umaima, before we wrap up?
I think also for me was what I find to be really interesting is that to know that Sijil Massa was like also the link when it comes to Africa, like the rest of Africa, and how it linked other countries, which is something I didn't know, that Morocco back then, as like, you know, Sijil Massa as a medieval city, has like been part of that, you know, exchange. It's in a whole like continent basically, and the rest of Islamic world. So it's more like of just like a feedback, not a question. But I think just mentioning that in your piece, like it's really interesting to know and bring more questions. And I think will lead more people to do more research on that. And have the links. Yeah, definitely. I think they will.
Yeah. No, it definitely played a key role. It was definitely, I think you can easily sort of and fairly also describe Sijil Massa as the gateway to the to a large part of the African or southern western part of Africa. Yeah.
Wow, what a great place to pause it here. Please go read more. There's much more to engage with. And again, thank you, Ilko, for sharing, and Umaima for your incredible insights. I think it made this a much more rich conversation. And thank you all for listening. This was another engaging and really educational Civilizations 101. Again, we learned all about the Midrarid Dynasty, and we hope to not forget it anymore, as it is now forever on our website and on this call. So again, thank you, Ilko, for researching, compiling. I know maybe it was a little bit more difficult, but you did it, and it's on our site. Again, you can go to our website. It's alfusaic.net. That's ALFUSAIC.net, and you can engage and explore all of our articles, but of course, the Civilizations 101 section. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you at the next one. Bye, everyone.